Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14, presented by Stakes, here to talk about this weekend's Missouri-Kansas State game. That is in Kansas, noon Eastern on ESPN2. Kansas State, as we do this on a Tuesday morning, about a 7.5-point favorite with an over-under of 54.5. Missouri beat Louisiana Tech on Thursday to open its season, and Kansas shut out South Dakota 34-0 and allowed 270 yards in doing so. Blake, we've got an old Big 12 rivalry renewing this weekend, and should be a good game.
Yeah, it should. I think, like we said, it's so hard to. I think Missouri was probably, I don't know if I guess better in their first game against
Mm,
Louisiana Tech. I think we expected it to be probably a bit of a closer game. We didn't know exactly what the defense was going to look like, or the offense for that matter. But yeah, I thought there was a lot of things that Missouri did well in that game. But again, the competition steps up a notch here with Kansas State. Like you mentioned, I don't know what we take away from a shutout win over South Dakota, but I still think, like you said, this is probably the kind of game coming into it. You expected Kansas State to be about a touchdown favorite, and that's basically what they are. So, I think it's the same theme here heading into this one. My biggest, intrigue comes with just what Missouri can do,
yeah.
offensively. Can they continue to, be able to do some of those things that we saw them do so well in game one? And I think that's going to be the interesting part. But of course, I still think the conversation's always going to turn to Missouri's defense overall, and just I think that will probably be maybe the biggest question in this game is just kind of seeing how they continue to progress on that side of the ball. So
Well, let's talk about Missouri's defense. I thought it looked a lot better in that game. I watched a good bit of it, and Tyron Hopper, their linebacker, was really good. Their secondary looked improved. I think they got in Rick Straw back, who missed a lot of last year. The Joseph Charleston kid who transferred from Clemson had a pick and looked pretty good. They had a couple picks in that game. They had several transfers from Power 5 programs up front, and their defensive line, which was just awful a year ago, looked a lot better. Now, that's against Louisiana Tech. So what that means, I don't know. Kansas State has got an interesting offense. Colin Klein, it seems like he was playing there yesterday, is now KSU's offensive coordinator. Adrian Martinez, who was a 4-year starting quarterback at Nebraska, I think accounted for over 10,000 yards of total offense. In fact, I think it was almost 11,000. And a lot of that was on the ground, 2,000, 2,500 was on the ground. They've got Deuce Vaughn, who gets Darren Sproles comps. He's an All-American, went 18 for 26 last week rushing the ball. And KSU ran the ball about 7.5 yards per carry. That included a 75-yard touchdown run on the game's first play from Malik Knowles in his only carry. They've got a returning all Big 12 left tackle in Cooper Beebe. I think this week is going to be a lot more challenging for Missouri than was last.
yeah, there's a lot more, like you said. I think there's a lot more potential of those having those big plays. You talked about kind of what Kansas State had in last week's game, and those are the kind of plays last year. When Missouri's defense was not as consistent, as we said, it got better in the second half of the year, but those kind of big plays, I think those are the ones you have to prevent, and that's what I'm most curious about. Because, like you said, you've got a Darren Sproles like guy for Kansas State, and just kind of looking at the possibilities there with Vaughn and what they'll be able to do on offense, and Martinez, someone who has a lot of experience. So I think this will, yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that it's going to be a bit more challenging for Missouri, but I think this is a good this is a good gauge here to be able to really have a much better feel. Not even, if it's, let's say, winning the game or losing the game, but really just kind of looking at some of those things on that side of the ball, specifically on defense. Because as we said, coming the season, that was where the questions were going to lie, just based on what we saw last year. And this will be a good test, given I think sort of the versatility of this Kansas State offense. Like I said, you can't really gain a lot from one game, but you can see the pieces that are in place, and whether it's Martinez, whether it's Vaughn, that they've got playmakers to work with, and I think that's where preventing that big play that is going to be it here for Missouri. I think.
Well, and interestingly, last week Kansas State really had Adrian Martinez as more of a
I was
game
gonna
manager
say,
if you
yeah,
read things, which he's really not, but it was
yeah.
interesting to see him in that role a week ago. We got some big games coming up this week. To add a little excitement to it, we at Southeastern 14 are making some predictions in the Stakes app. Those will be up soon. We want to hear if you guys agree or disagree with our takes. You can bet on games straight up. You can bet on games against the spread. You can do prop bets for players. All of that's free. You just sign up, you get an account, you bet with NFTs that, again, you get for free. Go to playwithstakes.com/14. Sign up for stakes, place your predictions on our questions. And if you use the invite code Southeastern14 when you sign up, you'll get a double welcome bonus. Okay, when Missouri's got the ball, Brady Cook, speaking of game manager, that's kind of what he's been labeled. He did a fine job at it a week ago. Missouri had a versatile run game with a lot of guys getting touches. We got our first glimpse of Luther Burden. They had several other guys who looked capable catching passes, which is no surprise because they had that last year too. Kansas State on defense last year went to a three-man front. They were awful 2 years ago, got much better last year, and of course pitched a shutout first game. Got good players everywhere. They've got a defensive end, and I'm going to see if I can pronounce his name, Felix Anandike Uzoma, and they've got a linebacker in Daniel Green. Those are both all Big 12 caliber players. They've got an all 12 big caliber defensive back in Julius Brents. If what we saw out of Kansas State in week one and in the progression last year is what this defense is this year, it's not going to be an easy one to score on, even though I think Missouri's got a lot of weapons, including Burden, who really got his touches, I guess, limited last week, but made a lot of them when called upon, although he did also cause an interception.
Yeah, I was gonna say these are the kind of games where guys like that, are going to be a focus, and they have to be a focus, I think. And like you mentioned, I don't think Missouri is going to put up what was it, 323 yards on the ground, in a week like this. And I think that's where you start to see, also the progression of the passing game because you do have Cook in there now, and I don't know how much we read just from what we saw in game one, but this will be a very nice test to see kind of what Missouri's offense, and kind of we know, like you said, whether it's Burden, a couple of these other guys that are going to be kind of the breakout type playmakers that you're going to see kind of lead this offense, I think. But this will be an interesting test going up against a Kansas State team that I think you look at them, you said they've got a lot of guys that are going to be able to make those plays. I think they're going to be able to make things difficult in terms of what Missouri is going to be able to do offensively. Like I mentioned, I don't think they're going to get the traction on the ground necessarily, and those kind of things. So I'm more curious, just to see what that looks like because I think coming into the season, as we said, there it's not that we didn't have questions about Missouri's offense, but there were some things that we just did not know. But I think you will get a much better answer in this game versus the Louisiana Tech game because, as we mentioned, Louisiana Tech I don't think is going to be a team that will necessarily be in that spot that's going to be able to do some of the things that a Kansas State will defensively to cause some havoc. I think for this Missouri offense. So.
Over under 54.5, and again, K-State a 7.5 point favorite. Don't have a great read on this game, but feels like maybe a Kansas State cover and perhaps a take the under.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Kansas State's defense is where this is interesting for me because um, I think they're probably good enough defensively to cause, like I said, to cause some problems for Missouri and to make this a lower scoring game. And I don't know how just overwhelmingly great maybe Kansas State's offense is either. So I think I'm kind of with
Mm.
you. I think I would probably go under on this one. I think that's probably the best play, and for the points. I mean, I don't know. I think because it's a low scoring game, I think that's kind of the expectation. I don't know that Missouri maybe can keep this within it. I think they maybe can keep this within a touchdown. So I think the points are better, but I don't know. I'll go Missouri to maybe make this a touchdown type game. So if it's 7.5, give me the plus with Missouri.
All right, thanks for watching. We are previewing every SEC game for week 2. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure you don't miss any of those.